It was a radiant July morning in 1997. Miami Beach was alive with its usual vibrancy, locals jogging along the scenic Ocean Drive, tourists soaking up the sunshine, and cafes bustling with the aroma of fresh coffee. Amid this routine, Gianni Versace, the celebrated fashion icon, stepped out of his luxurious mansion, Casa Casuarina. Known for its grand Mediterranean revival architecture, the mansion stood as a testament to Versace's impeccable taste and penchant for the extraordinary. As part of his daily ritual, Versace strolled down Ocean Drive to a nearby cafe to pick up international magazines, a habit that kept him connected to global trends and news. The morning air was crisp, the ocean breeze gently rustling the palm trees. For a man who had redefined the fashion world, these moments of solitude and simplicity offered a rare reprieve from the demands of his empire. Yet, unknown to him, a shadow loomed. A predator was lying in wait. As Gianni approached the iconic marble steps of his home, holding a handful of magazines, the world around him seemed to pause. The grand iron gates to Casa Casuarina framed the scene, and the mosaic-lined steps shimmered under the morning sun. But just as he reached his door, tragedy struck with chilling precision. From behind, a man stepped forward, Andrew Cunanan, a fugitive already notorious for his violent killing spree. Without hesitation, Cunanan raised a .40 caliber handgun and fired 2 shots. The first struck the back of Versace's head, and the second hit his neck. Gianni collapsed on the steps, his blood pooling against the pristine marble. The sound of gunfire reverberated through the neighborhood, shattering the serenity. Witnesses stood frozen, unable to comprehend the horror they had just witnessed. A pedestrian passing by screamed for help, while another rushed toward the fallen designer, hoping against hope to save him. Moments later, Versace's partner, Antonio D'Amico, emerged from the mansion, his cries of anguish piercing through the chaos. Andrew Cunanan, the man responsible for the heinous act, quickly vanished into the bustling Miami streets. His face, though unfamiliar to most, carried the weight of a dark and violent past, a past that had now intersected with one of the world's most renowned figures. The news of the murder spread like wildfire. In an era before social media, television channels and radio stations interrupted regular programming to announce the shocking crime. The fashion world came to a standstill. The death of Gianni Versace was not just a personal tragedy, but a seismic event that would ripple across the globe, leaving countless questions in its wake. What could drive a man like Cunanan to such violence? And why would he target Gianni Versace, a designer beloved by millions? The answers would prove as elusive as the man who had pulled the trigger. The gunshots shattered the morning calm, leaving bystanders stunned and unsure of how to react. Some passers-by, mere feet away, stared in disbelief at the horrifying scene. Gianni Versace, the larger-than-life fashion icon, lay crumpled on his mansion steps, his vibrant life extinguished in an instant. The stark contrast between the glamour of his home and the brutality of the crime was almost too much to process. Among the onlookers, one woman screamed for help, her voice trembling as she called out to anyone within earshot. A man on a nearby bench ran toward the steps, but stopped abruptly, overcome by shock at the sight of blood pooling around Versace's lifeless form. A few brave individuals rushed forward, hoping for a miracle, but it was too late. Versace's injuries were fatal. In the chaos, the killer, Andrew Cunanan, coolly walked away, blending into the bustling streets of Miami. Clad in a baseball cap and casual clothes, he moved with calculated ease, as if he were just another tourist on Ocean Drive. No one stopped him. No one suspected that this young man in his late 20s had just committed a heinous act. The scene was chaotic, with emergency responders arriving minutes later, their sirens piercing the air. The crowd grew, filled with locals and tourists who had no idea they were witnessing the tragic end of one of fashion's brightest stars. As the police cordoned off the area, questions filled the air. Who would commit such a brazen act, and why? The answers would not come easily. To the world, Gianni Versace was not just a designer. He was an artist, a trailblazer who redefined the very essence of fashion. Born in Reggio Calabria, Italy, he had risen from humble beginnings to create an empire that embodied luxury, confidence, and unapologetic boldness. His designs, often characterized by vibrant colors, daring cuts, and intricate patterns, were a celebration of individuality and glamour. Versace wasn't just about clothing, he was about creating a lifestyle. His work adorned the most iconic figures of the time, from Princess Diana to Madonna, cementing his place as the king of high fashion. Gianni's vision extended beyond the runway. He was among the first designers to recognize the power of celebrity in branding, turning his name into a global symbol of opulence. But beyond the glitz and glamour, Versace was a deeply private man. He adored his family, particularly his sister Donatella, who served as both his muse and confidante. Together, they had built the House of Versace into a powerhouse that transcended fashion, influencing art, culture, and even architecture. Yet, even a man of his stature wasn't immune to tragedy. His fame brought him admiration and envy in equal measure, and his success painted a target on his back. But why would Andrew Cunanan, a man with no apparent ties to Versace, choose him as a victim? Was it an act of jealousy, a twisted bid for infamy, or something even darker? As the world mourned the loss of a legend, investigators scrambled to piece together the puzzle. Each revelation about Gianni Versace's life and his senseless murder only deepened the mystery, leaving everyone asking, why him? Why now? The investigation quickly uncovered the identity of Gianni Versace's killer, Andrew Cunanan. At the time of the murder, Cunanan was already infamous, having embarked on a months-long killing spree that had left 4 men dead. The FBI had placed him on their 10 most wanted list, but despite his notoriety, he had managed to elude capture, slipping through law enforcement's grasp time and time again. Cunanan's reign of terror had begun in Minneapolis, where his first 2 victims were Jeffrey Trail, a former Navy officer, and David Madsen, an architect and former lover. Both murders were shockingly violent, hinting at the depth of Cunanan's rage and instability. From there, he traveled across the country, killing Lee Miglin, a wealthy Chicago real estate developer, and William Reese, a cemetery caretaker in New Jersey. Each murder was more erratic than the last, making his motives difficult to discern. What set Cunanan apart from other fugitives was his ability to blend in. He was a chameleon, adept at charming those around him and hiding in plain sight. This skill made him incredibly dangerous and nearly impossible to track. By the time he arrived in Miami, Cunanan had been on the run for over 2 months, leaving behind a trail of death and unanswered questions. But why did Cunanan choose Gianni Versace as his final victim? The 2 men had no known personal connection, yet Cunanan targeted the fashion icon with chilling precision. Was it jealousy, a desperate bid for fame, or something even more sinister? The question would haunt investigators and the public alike, as the answers remained as elusive as Cunanan himself had been. Andrew Cunanan was a man of many faces. Born in 1969 in San Diego, California, he was the youngest of 4 children in a family of modest means. His father, Modesto Cunanan, was a Filipino immigrant who worked as a stockbroker, while his mother, Mary Ann Shilasai, was of Italian descent. Andrew's early life appeared ordinary, but cracks in his family dynamic soon became evident. From a young age, Cunanan displayed a knack for reinvention. He was highly intelligent, excelling academically and charming those around him. However, his ability to fabricate elaborate stories about his background hinted at a deeper insecurity. He often claimed to come from immense wealth, presenting himself as a jet-setting socialite despite his modest upbringing. This duality defined Cunanan's life. To his acquaintances, he was the life of the party, a polished, well-dressed man who seemed to know everyone and everything. Yet beneath the surface, he was deeply troubled. He moved in elite social circles, often relying on the generosity of older, wealthier men to fund his lavish lifestyle. As his lies unraveled and his financial situation deteriorated, so did his mental state. By the time of his killing spree, Cunanan's facade had completely cracked. He was no longer the charismatic socialite, but a man consumed by anger, jealousy, and desperation. His ability to manipulate those around him became a weapon, enabling him to carry out his crimes with terrifying ease. The contradictions in Conanan's life made him an enigma. How could a man so outwardly charming and intelligent descend into such horrific violence? His actions defied explanation, leaving behind a legacy of terror that would forever be tied to the murder of Gianni Versace. By the time Gianni Versace was murdered, Andrew Cunanan had become one of America's most notorious fugitives. The FBI had added him to their 10 most wanted list, branding him as a highly dangerous and unpredictable killer. His spree of violence had begun months earlier, and his victims spanned different backgrounds and locations, with no apparent pattern beyond his growing instability. Conanan's first known victim was Jeffrey Trail, a former Navy officer and friend. The murder was brutal. Trail was beaten to death with a claw hammer in David Madsen's apartment, another of Conanan's friends and former lovers. Days later, Madsen himself was found dead near a lake in Minnesota, shot execution style. These killings marked the start of Conanan's downward spiral. The spree continued with Lee Miglin, a wealthy Chicago real estate developer. Miglin's death was particularly gruesome, with evidence suggesting he had been tortured. Cunanan then killed William Reese, a New Jersey cemetery caretaker, to steal his truck, which he used to drive to Miami. The randomness of Cunanan's victims confounded investigators. Some were close to him, while others were complete strangers. Each murder seemed more erratic and senseless than the last, fueling a growing fear of what Cunanan might do next. As his crimes escalated, so did his notoriety, but his ability to stay one step ahead of law enforcement only added to his mystique. One of the most haunting questions surrounding the murder of Gianni Versace is why? Andrew Cunanan and Versace had no known personal connection, yet Cunanan targeted him with chilling precision. Theories about his motive have swirled for decades, but none have provided definitive answers. Some have speculated that jealousy drove Cunanan's actions. As a man who longed to be part of the elite, Cunanan may have seen Versace, a global symbol of success and glamour, as everything he could never be. Others believe Cunanan's act was a desperate bid for fame. His killing spree had already garnered national attention, but murdering a figure as prominent as Versace would ensure his name was etched into history. Another theory suggests that Cunanan's actions were fueled by mental illness, exacerbated by his unraveling life. By the time of the murder, he had lost his financial support, his friends, and his carefully constructed persona. Killing Versace might have been an act of pure rage, a way to lash out at a world he believed had rejected him. Despite extensive investigation, Cunanan's motive remains one of the most perplexing aspects of the case. Was it envy, fame, or sheer madness that drove him to kill one of the most beloved figures in the fashion world? The truth may have died with Cunanan himself, leaving only speculation in its wake. As investigators delved into the murder, one chilling detail became clear. Andrew Cunanan's actions were far from impulsive. Witnesses later reported seeing Cunanan near Versace's mansion in the days leading up to the killing, suggesting that he had been stalking his victim and meticulously planning his attack. Cunanan's familiarity with Miami Beach only added to this theory. He had been living in the area for weeks, staying at a rundown hotel just blocks away from Casa Casuarina. During this time, he moved unnoticed, blending into the vibrant yet transient environment of South Beach. On the morning of the murder, Cunanan's behavior was precise and deliberate. Surveillance footage from a nearby store showed him calmly purchasing the newspapers he carried when he approached Versace. The act of gunning down a global icon in broad daylight in front of witnesses underscored his boldness and the level of planning involved. Despite his calculated approach, Cunanan left no manifesto, no note, and no definitive explanation for his crime. The lack of concrete answers continues to fuel speculation. Was this a meticulously planned assassination born of obsession, or an opportunistic act carried out by a man desperate to make his mark? The question lingers, adding to the enduring enigma of Andrew Cunanan and the murder of Gianni Versace. The murder of Gianni Versace thrust Miami Beach into a state of fear and chaos. Law enforcement agencies from the local police to the FBI mobilized immediately, determined to capture Andrew Cunanan. His ability to elude authorities for months only heightened the urgency, especially now that he had claimed such a high-profile victim. Checkpoints were established across the city, and officers patrolled the streets, scanning for any sign of the fugitive. Helicopters circled overhead, while search teams combed through abandoned buildings and secluded areas. Residents, already shaken by Cunanan's notoriety, began locking their doors and avoiding unnecessary outings. The usually vibrant city was gripped by anxiety. Adding to the challenge was Conanan's chameleon-like ability to blend in. Miami Beach, with its transient population of tourists and seasonal visitors, offered countless hiding places. Despite being on the FBI's 10 most wanted list and having his face plastered on news outlets nationwide, Cunanan managed to disappear into the city's underbelly. The manhunt stretched on, each passing day amplifying the fear that Cunanan might strike again. Investigators followed leads, some credible, others fueled by panic and speculation. Would he attempt to flee the city, or would he strike one last time before being caught? The tension in Miami Beach was palpable as the community held its collective breath, waiting for answers. The breakthrough came 9 days after Gianni Versace's murder in an unexpected place. A houseboat caretaker in the Miami Beach marina noticed something unusual: the sound of a television playing in a vessel that was supposed to be vacant. Suspicious, he alerted the police, unaware that he had just stumbled upon the hiding place of one of the most wanted men in America. Law enforcement quickly descended upon the scene, surrounding the houseboat. What they found inside brought the manhunt to a sudden and tragic end. Andrew Cunanan, cornered and desperate, had taken his own life with a single gunshot to the head. The weapon he used was the same .40 caliber handgun that had claimed Gianni Versace's life, as well as the lives of his other victims. The discovery of Cunanan's body left investigators with a mix of relief and frustration. While the immediate threat was over, Cunanan's death meant that he had taken the answers to countless questions with him. The houseboat became a scene of grim fascination as investigators pieced together Cunanan's final days, but the details offered little insight into his motives. Andrew Cunanan's death brought an abrupt end to the manhunt, but it left behind a trail of mysteries that would never be fully solved. Chief among them was the question that haunted everyone: why had he chosen Gianni Versace as his final victim? Investigators scoured the evidence for connections between the two men. There were unsubstantiated rumors that Cunanan and Versace had crossed paths years earlier at a social event in San Francisco, but no concrete proof of any relationship ever surfaced. Cunanan's fascination with fame and wealth seemed to align with his choice of Versace, but the lack of a personal connection made the murder all the more perplexing. Cunanan's mental state in his final weeks only deepened the mystery. Living in isolation, he had no access to his previous social circles and had burned through his financial resources. Was Versace's murder an act of revenge against a world that had rejected him, or a calculated bid to leave a lasting legacy? Even the timeline of Cunanan's killing spree raised questions. His previous murders had escalated in brutality and randomness, suggesting a man spiraling out of control. Yet, his murder of Versace was deliberate and precise. The lack of answers has ensured that this case remains one of the most haunting and enigmatic chapters in true crime history, leaving the public to wonder what drove Andrew Cunanan to his final horrific act. The murder of Gianni Versace sent shockwaves through the fashion world, marking the tragic loss of one of its most brilliant and innovative minds. Gianni wasn't just a designer, he was a visionary who redefined what fashion could be. His creations weren't mere clothing, they were statements of empowerment, confidence, and glamour. Versace's designs pushed boundaries, blending classic Italian tailoring with bold, provocative elements. His use of vibrant colors, intricate patterns, and daring cuts became his signature, making the house of Versace synonymous with luxury and sensuality. Celebrities, royalty, and cultural icons adorned themselves in his designs, from Princess Diana to Elton John, solidifying his status as a cultural trailblazer. Beyond his artistry, Gianni revolutionized the business of fashion. He was one of the first designers to harness the power of celebrity endorsement, building a brand that transcended the runway. His untimely death left an irreplaceable void, and the fashion world mourned not only the loss of his talent, but also the future creations that would never come to be. The murder was a devastating blow to the Versace family. At the heart of Gianni's empire was a tight-knit bond with his siblings Donatella and Santo. Donatella, his muse and confidante, had been instrumental in shaping the brand's identity, while Santo managed the business operations. Together, they had built the House of Versace into a global phenomenon. In the wake of Gianni's death, Donatella was thrust into an unfamiliar spotlight. Grieving the loss of her brother, she now bore the immense responsibility of preserving his legacy and ensuring the survival of their brand. It was a daunting task. Gianni had been the creative force behind Versace, and the world doubted whether anyone could fill his shoes. But Donatella proved resilient. Over time, she reimagined the brand, blending Gianni's iconic aesthetic with her own modern vision. Her determination to honor her brother's memory became the driving force behind her work. Meanwhile, Santo focused on maintaining the business's stability, ensuring that the House of Versace remained a global powerhouse. Despite their public resilience, the personal toll on the family was immense. The Versace siblings had shared not just a business, but a profound emotional bond. Gianni's absence left a void that no amount of success could ever fill. Gianni Versace's murder transcended the realm of personal tragedy to become a cultural moment that exposed society's darker obsessions. The fashion icon's death on the steps of his mansion at the height of his fame captivated global audiences. It was a story of glamour and violence that seemed almost too surreal to believe. The media frenzy was immediate and overwhelming. News outlets across the world dissected every detail of the case, turning both Gianni Versace and Andrew Cunanan into household names. Tabloid headlines sensationalized the crime, while television specials speculated endlessly about the killer's motives. For weeks, the public was gripped by the case, a chilling reminder of the vulnerability of even the most untouchable figures. The tragedy also sparked debates about security and privacy. How could someone as prominent as Gianni Versace fall victim to such a brutal act in broad daylight? The case raised questions about the cost of fame and the dangers that often accompany a life lived in the spotlight. Versace's murder also reflected broader societal issues, from the romanticization of celebrity to the public's fascination with violence. The crime remains a haunting symbol of the fragile line between fame and infamy, a reminder that even the brightest stars can be extinguished in an instant. Andrew Cunanan's actions were more than a string of horrific crimes, they were a stark reflection of society's darker obsessions with wealth, fame, and status. Cunanan's life was marked by a deep yearning to belong to the world of the elite, a realm he could only observe from the fringes. His fascination with celebrity and affluence became an all-consuming obsession, one that drove him to emulate the lives of those he admired while harboring resentment for what he could never truly attain. The murder of Gianni Versace, a global symbol of success and glamour, was the ultimate act of this obsession. Cunanan didn't just target a person, he targeted an idea, a representation of everything he longed for but could never possess. In his twisted mind, taking Versace's life may have been a way to claim a piece of that world for himself, even if only in infamy. Cunanan's crimes forced society to confront uncomfortable truths about the allure of fame. The case highlighted the dangerous extremes to which individuals might go in their pursuit of recognition, and it exposed the vulnerabilities that come with living in the public eye. Fame, for all its allure, can cast long and dangerous shadows, a reality that Gianni Versace tragically experienced. The marble steps of Casa Casuarina, once a symbol of opulence and artistic brilliance, have become a somber landmark. Tourists from around the world now visit the site, not to marvel at the mansion's grandeur, but to stand at the spot where Gianni Versace's life was violently taken. Flowers, notes, and memorials are often left on the steps, transforming the scene of a tragedy into a place of quiet reflection. Yet the site remains haunting. The juxtaposition of the mansion's breathtaking architecture and the bloodshed that occurred, there is a chilling reminder of the fragility of life, even for those who seem untouchable. For many, the steps represent more than just the end of a life. They symbolize the collision of beauty and brutality, of aspiration and destruction. Despite the tragedy, the mansion has endured as a symbol of Versace's legacy. Now operating as a luxury hotel, Casa Casuarina draws visitors eager to experience a piece of the world Gianni Versace created. But for those who know its history, the steps serve as a solemn reminder of how fleeting life can be, no matter one's success or status. Gianni Versace's death was a devastating loss, but his legacy continues to shine brightly. His designs, characterized by their boldness, vibrancy, and unapologetic celebration of individuality, remain iconic. Versace's work not only transformed fashion, but also left an indelible mark on culture, inspiring generations of designers, artists, and visionaries. Under the leadership of Donatella Versace, the House of Versace has flourished, blending Gianni's pioneering spirit with modern sensibilities. The brand's continued success is a testament to his enduring influence and the resilience of the family he left behind. Beyond his contributions to fashion, Gianni Versace's legacy is one of empowerment and creativity. He championed diversity on the runway, celebrated the beauty of self-expression, and showed the world that fashion could be both art and statement. His tragic end may haunt the fashion world, but his life and work continue to inspire, reminding us of the transformative power of vision and passion. Though Gianni Versace's life was cut short, his name remains synonymous with luxury, innovation, and fearless creativity. His legacy endures not only in the collections that bear his name, but also in the hearts of those who continue to be inspired by his extraordinary story. The murder of Gianni Versace remains one of the most perplexing cases in modern true crime history. For all the investigative work and media coverage, crucial questions about the tragedy remain unanswered. Chief among them is what truly drove Andrew Cunanan to commit such heinous acts of violence, culminating in the murder of a man who symbolized creativity, success, and influence. Was Cunanan's decision to target Gianni Versace purely opportunistic, driven by the chance to end his killing spree with a high-profile victim, or was it fueled by a deeper obsession, perhaps an attempt to lash out at a world that had excluded him? The absence of a manifesto, diary, or confession leaves investigators and the public to speculate. The nature of Cunanan's crimes, ranging from the murder of close acquaintances to complete strangers, further muddies the waters. His actions were both calculated and erratic, suggesting a mind spiraling out of control, but still capable of chilling precision. His choice of Gianni Versace as his final victim feels deliberate, yet the lack of a clear motive only deepens the mystery. Rumors of a prior encounter between Cunanan and Versace, though unsubstantiated, add another layer of intrigue. Did the two men cross paths in the glittering social circles of San Francisco years earlier, or was this connection merely a fabrication of Cunanan's delusions? These unanswered questions have cemented the case as one of true crime's most enigmatic and haunting puzzles. The murder of Gianni Versace is more than a tale of tragedy. It's a story that forces us to examine the fragility of life and the darker aspects of human nature. As we reflect on this chilling chapter in history, we're left with lingering questions that may never be fully answered. Could Gianni Versace's death have been prevented? Did Andrew Cunanan's rampage highlight systemic failures in law enforcement's ability to apprehend dangerous fugitives? And what does this case reveal about society's obsession with fame, wealth, and the desire to be remembered no matter the cost? The events of that fateful morning on Ocean Drive remain etched into collective memory, a stark reminder of the unpredictability of violence and the vulnerability of even the most successful individuals. The glamour of Versace's life stands in sharp contrast to the horror of his death, making his story both inspirational and cautionary. The steps of Casa Casuarina serve as a haunting symbol of this juxtaposition, a place where beauty, ambition, and artistry were overshadowed by violence and loss. But Gianni Versace's true legacy transcends the tragedy of his death. His work continues to inspire, his designs live on, and his vision of empowerment and individuality endures. In reflecting on this story, we invite you to share your thoughts. What do you believe truly happened on that fateful day? What drove Andrew Cunanan to commit such an act? Could Gianni Versace's death have been avoided, or was it the tragic culmination of forces beyond anyone's control? Let us know your theories below as we continue to explore one of the most haunting cases in the world of true crime.